Hello and welcome to Multi-Vendor Progress Report. I'm Ivan from the CS Card team, and in this video I'll tell you what we've done in April and May 2020. This video will consist of three parts. The first two parts cover what we've already done in April and May, and the third part covers what we are planning to do in the future. Do note that when we say what we have done, it doesn't mean that the functionality has been released already. That's why every slide has a version number, which will tell you when you can expect this functionality. Let's begin with general improvements that we have already made and which will be a part of one of the future versions. The biggest change of April and May is how the marketplace collects money from vendors and handles debtors. There are a lot of changes in that aspect, and we'll have to go point by point to address them. Let's start with the fact that you can now set individual terms for each vendor. Previously, the maximum debt and the time to pay that debt were global settings, but now they're available in vendor plans and are unique for each plan. For example, let's assume that you have a very important vendor who have subscribed to Platinum plan and pay $1,000 per month. Naturally, you'd want to keep that vendor, so you might give them some leeway in terms of how soon they have to repay that debt. Here's how it works. Once a vendor's balance gets below a certain point, the timer starts, and once that timer expires, the vendor becomes suspended. This change allows your marketplace to be more flexible in its terms. Now to the next improvement. Previously, a debtor only got his or her admin panel blocked until the debt was repaid. The products still remained on the storefront and could be ordered by customers. This wasn't always such a good idea, since a vendor could leave the marketplace entirely and you wouldn't know about it, and you wouldn't stop the customers from buying the product, which would no longer be supplied. This could be bad for the marketplace. That's why we have added the ability for you to decide what to do to suspended vendors. It is done via the new add-on called Vendor to Admin Payments, which replaces the old vendor debt payout. Now, the settings are still a work in progress. We'll rearrange them a little bit to make them easier to understand. But the two things you can do to suspended vendors are hide their products from the storefront and block their admin panels like before. You can do both of these things, one of them, or neither of them. That way, only you decide what to do to suspended vendors. The add-in has become more configurable, but it also gives you an easier time with managing debtors. Here is how we achieve this. Previously, you had to track down debtors in the admin panel, but now you can just look at the vendor status and see whose admin panel was blocked or whose products were hidden. It is determined by the status now. Another cool thing is that you can distinguish long-term debtors and ordinary debtors. By long-term, we mean vendors who haven't paid the debt for a while and probably won't at all. They get the disabled status automatically. This is handled by the settings of the Vendor to Admin Payments add-on. You can choose to disable a suspended vendor once the vendor spends some time in this status, for example 90 days. As a result, we have a more flexible add-on which gives you more control over vendors and gives you a better idea who is a debtor and who is not. However, it will require some changes on your end, and this is what I'm going to cover next. The changes I'm talking about deal with this setting. Now, previously, it was a part of the vendor debt payout add-on and consisted of two separate settings, the maximum debt and the time to pay the debt. Those settings worked independently. A vendor could become a debtor and have his admin panel blocked if A. his balance went below this sum, or B. his balance went negative after paying for a vendor plan and this time elapsed. So a vendor could get his admin panel blocked without reaching this debt. Now, in the new setup, it will be impossible. So some vendors who were considered debtors by old rules will no longer be considered debtors. That's why during the upgrade, we'll ask you to decide how you want to proceed. There are two options. A. You allow your vendors to have negative balance, in which case you won't have to modify anything. Or B. You decide that your marketplace requires vendors to have a balance of 0 at least, and if a vendor goes lower, then he is instantly a debtor and needs to pay a debt within a certain time. In that case, you'd need to set the balance of all plans to 0. You'll see an explanation of this during the upgrade and you'll be offered a choice, but you'll also be able to configure the vendor plans as you see fit at any time. As you see, there are a lot of changes. Hopefully, they will be able to make your life better in Multi-Vendor for 12.1. And I've also saved the best change for last. The change I'm talking about is the ability for vendors to refill balance at any time and not just when a vendor has a debt. That way, a vendor could avoid a situation when he or she becomes a debtor in the first place and you get the money in advance. We hope that you find this feature useful for your business. Another big change is product variations. For those who don't know, variations are similar products that differ in either color or size or similar features. Customers can switch between these products right on the storefront. A vendor could create a variation with existing features such as existing colors, sizes, and whatnot, but couldn't add his own color or size, nor could he create a new feature such as, I don't know, length. In version 4.12.1, we'll rectify it by allowing vendors to create their own features and variants if you let them. There are many technical moments to iron out first, so for now, this ability is located in Settings Vendors. You can choose to allow vendors to manage product features. And there we have it. Now a vendor will be able to create a new feature, name it as he sees fit, specify its purpose, and do whatever with it. Other vendors will be able to use it too, and the original vendor will be able to delete the feature, but only as long as this feature isn't already used by other vendors. In version 4.12.1, product variations will completely replace the old option combinations. We realize how important it is for vendors to create such products, and that's why we are adding the ability for vendors to create features and their values in 4.12.1. Further in this video, we'll also bring up some interface improvements that will make creation of variations easier for vendors and for marketplace owners. Another cool thing is the ability for customers and vendors to upload files in their profile. To do that, go to Administration, Profile Fields. Select the type of the user which you want to create the field for, either customer or vendor. Then add a field and set the type to file. You can use this field type for uploading any files you'd like. For instance, when you want your vendors to upload some document or a logo, or when you want your customers to upload something. The choice is yours. After you create the field, make sure to show it where you need it or make it required if you'd like. For example, I've made this field appear on the vendor registration page right here, and you'll be able to see the file on the vendor profile page in Vendors. Here's where you can find it. The next improvement is for vendors. It's the ability to find all the comments and reviews by customers in one place. Previously, for technical reasons, vendors didn't have a single page for it and had to check every product, every page, go to the Reviews tab and see what's going on there. But right now, they can just go to Website, Comments and Reviews and have it all in one place. Vendors still can't edit them, but it's convenient for them to keep track of everything that's going on with their content. Another change I'd like to talk about concerns Multi-Vendor Ultimate. As you know, Multi-Vendor Ultimate gives you additional tools for tailoring your marketplace to different countries or audiences. Previously, you could create multiple storefronts for different countries and offer different payment methods on those storefronts. However, you might not want to create separate storefronts. For this scenario, we've introduced a new add-on called Payments by Country. It allows you to set different payment methods for different countries without the need to create a storefront for each country. Once you install the add-on, every payment method will get a new tab called Countries. In this tab, you'll be able to specify the countries where this payment method is either shown or hidden. For example, by default, it's set to hide payment method in specific countries. We can hide it in Algeria. Alternatively, we could make the payment method only show in Algeria and not in other countries. Now, whether a customer will see a payment method depends on two factors. A. His IP address, and B. The country that is specified in the customer's billing address. If at least one of these conditions matches the country, then customer will see the payment method at checkout. These conditions work independently. For example, a customer whose IP address is associated with the United States will see payment methods applicable for the United States and for whatever country he selects. Before we move on to the next part, let's go over some other improvements that we've made in April and May. First of all, we improved the performance of Stripe Connect. Previously, its scripts loaded on all pages, whereas now they'll only load on product pages where payment buttons are and on the checkout page. That way, pages will load faster while the add-on is active. Another improvement is for the Common Products add-on. This add-on allows your vendors to sell the same products with different prices. Now, the product will appear with the discount label. It applies not only to the product list, but also to the product page. Customers will see a label like "Save up to X%." In our case, the cheapest offer is $90, and that's 10% off the list price. The next improvement is the ability to customize the size of variation icons. Here are the icons with the default size. You can now modify those sizes in Settings, Thumbnails. Let's increase the size twice. And here is what happened after we've done it. The last thing I'll describe in this section is actually a series of improvements. They deal with vendor registration flow. Most of them are rather small, so I won't draw your attention to them, but they're mostly aimed at making vendor registration smoother or a more pleasant experience. We changed texts here and there, made a few things more obvious, and there is only one particular change that I can demonstrate. On the storefront, you have Become a Seller link. It usually leads to the list of your vendor plans. But what happens if you don't want a vendor to choose any plan, but rather want to assign the plan? Previously, if you hid all those plans, then you had to also alter the link so that it would lead your vendor to the registration page instead of the plan selection page. But in version 4.12.1, you won't have to bother. If you have hidden or disabled all your vendor plans, then clicking Become a Seller will take the potential vendor straight to the registration page. So these are the kinds of improvements we've added to 4.11.4 and 4.12.1. Kind of easy to miss, but also quite convenient. And now to the second part of our video, interface improvements. I have moved interface improvements to a separate part because there is a general philosophy that unites all these improvements. I could sum it up as being able to do more without having to navigate the interface. You'll see what I mean in a few minutes. For example, when you create a product, you'll no longer have to go to options if you decide that a product needs some sort of new option. You'll be able to create it right during product creation. Here is the screenshot, and here is how adding an option works on the product editing page. You just type the name, click Add, and specify the basics of the option. If you need more settings, you can always go to Advanced Option Creation, and there you'll have access to all the standard fields. We have also done the same for product features. It comes especially useful if you allow vendors to create new features. That way, they can add them just as easily as you normally would. We applied the same approach to creation of product variations. Now you or your vendors can simply go to the Variations tab, click Add Variations, select the features that you need for creating those variations, and add multiple variants. And there we have it. We have created multiple variations. In a similar manner, we have improved the creation of vendor plans and editing vendors. When selecting a plan for a vendor, you now see more information about the conditions, such as its price, commission, and how many vendors use it. You can also search for existing plans or create a new plan altogether. Once you do that, you can specify the terms. That way, it's easier than ever to create custom conditions for specific vendors. To sum it all up, the general philosophy of these improvements is to let you do your job quicker without having to go between products, vendors, options, features, vendor plans, etc. But there are also improvements in other aspects of the interface that we'll also mention here. We've added a new section to the vendors menu called Moderation. This menu allows you to find every product and every vendor that needs your review. For example, here we see the products that require approval and the products that we have rejected for some reason. And here we can see the vendors that still require our approval before they appear on the storefront. This way, you no longer need to search for products and vendors all over the marketplace. Another small improvement is about newly registered vendors. When you view or edit such vendors, you now have the thumbs up and thumbs down icons instead of the status. That way, you are certain what you need to do to those vendors, because previously you had to figure out that to make the vendor appear you needed to change his or her status. And the last interface improvement I'll briefly mention here is the improved management of feature groups. Here is how feature groups looked before, and here is how they look now. The most important differences are the introduction of internal name and display name, both of which are importable and exportable. That way, you'd be able to have different feature groups under the same name on the storefront, but they'd have different names in the admin panel. You'll also see what sort of features are included in the group. This is a pretty small improvement, but hopefully it will make management of feature groups more convenient. And now we have reached the final part, what we are planning to do in the future. The first plan is to let you customize your multi-vendor ultimate storefronts even further by letting you specify different settings values for different storefronts. We also have plans for mobile application. The goal is to have it support some of the important add-ons of multi-vendor. First of all, the support of variations. Currently, there is no ability to switch between products on the product page in mobile application. We're planning to rectify that. And we're also planning to introduce the support of direct customer-to-vendor payments. As for multi-vendor itself, we have multiple plans. One of them is PayPal Commerce Platform for marketplaces, which allows you to split payments between your marketplace and multiple vendors. We are currently working on its integration. The second plan is further improvement of variations for vendors. There are still some things that we need to do about it. And the biggest plan we have is to make sure that vendors have an easier time working at your marketplace. That's why one of our priorities is making product import easier for vendors, making it easier for them to work with the admin panel, and we're also planning to further refine the interface to make it more pleasant to work with. Hopefully, I'll be able to tell you more about it in the next video report. And this one is concluded. This was Ivan from the CS Card team. Thank you very much for your time, and until next time,